Commercial Sales and Marketing Manager for Janko Steel Limited. Welcome, sir, and you've got the floor.
Thank you. I will comment on the recently implemented American steel tariffs, their impact on our company and the Canadian steel industry as a whole. We are also proposing a viable solution and plan to compensate companies like Janko Steel who are adversely affected by these tariffs. Our business has grown over the years to this number of 180 employees with significant sales and development in the United States. Tons sold in the U.S. have increased 270% since 2014, and they now represent 30% of Janko Steel's business. Needless to say, the tariffs have created very difficult issues for our company. Significant negotiations and discussions had to take place to determine how the additional tariff costs would be paid on existing orders. Some customers acquiesced to pay some of the tariff, while others refused to pay anything at all. Some have canceled their orders with us, and in some cases, Janko is paying the full cost of the tariff in order to maintain the customer relationships that have taken us years to develop. We have also been forced to cancel some of our orders and hold off placing new orders with our Canadian steel mills. The fact remains that if our U.S. customers had bought their material from an American supplier, they would not be affected. This plays right into President Trump's agenda and is directly threatening the business of Janko Steel and the health of the Canadian steel industry. Every day we are finding that we are no longer competitive when compared to U.S. American steel service centers, and our American customers are now sourcing new supply from their local market in order to secure greater cost certainty. We need an immediate plan as to how we will remain competitive, and without assistance from our government, this critical U.S. business will be lost. An immediate solution would be to get the NAFTA deal done. We understand everyone is working hard at this, and a successful deal would allow us to go back to business as usual. This is very difficult to manage, but here is a plan. Al Schutten, the owner and president of Janko Steel, proposes that the Canadian government implement the following as a possible short-term solution. Canada is placing a tariff on U.S. steel imports starting on July 1st. Those funds collected should immediately be made available to companies like Janko Steel who are shipping steel into the U.S. and being charged the illegal U.S. steel tariffs. These Canadian companies should then be entitled to a payment equaling 50% of the tariff payments that they have been required to make to the U.S. government. That would go a long way to allowing Janko and other steel companies to remain competitive, maintain their existing U.S. business and employment levels, and minimize the long-term loss of our U.S. business. It will also help to alleviate the cash flow issues that we face to a degree. If these tariffs remain in effect for much longer, our current business model simply does not work. Without some assistance from our government, we will be forced to make some very difficult decisions that we had not even thought of or entertained a month ago.
I really feel this is like a surreal time. We're all calmly sitting around the table, but the reality is we're in a very major crisis. And it's kind of like the frog in the pot, right? If it jumps into a hot boiling, he's going to jump right up. But I feel like we're boiling to death here, and that there's going to be some very serious consequences that are going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the next month. So you did talk about it briefly.
Yeah.
But just talk to us about how complicated it is with uncertainty. Not knowing what the plan is, not knowing how long you're going to have to subsidize the tariffs, how on earth can you actually function and make plans for the future when everything is so unsettling?
Absolutely. So I'll try and do that in the 2 stages. So the one point is asking about how long it takes to get U.S. customers. We have had a tremendous partnership with Dofasco, all 3 of our steel mills, but Dofasco has been a real big part of our ArcelorMittal. Dofasco has been a large part of our growth. Since 2014, we have really grown to that number of, as I said, 270% growth, and it only takes really a couple of times that you are offside for competitive nature, or when you're quoting a job, that you will start to lose your footprint in an area. The uncertainty you speak about, Dean, is that if we knew the rules and we knew the rules were going to last for the next year, we could maybe make a good business decision. But right now, the last thing we want to do is lay off people. We went through the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. We did not lay off any workers. We actually expanded in 2010. Our biggest growth has been 2010 to now. And I can tell you that when I say that we will have to have a decision about laying people off, it is real. That is not just saying something to make it a big statement. We're going to have to do that. We do not want to. Wonder, again, how you try to look at things that are possible and probable when you're trying to work out risk in business. And we don't really have an idea of what is probable anymore. But what is possible is actually quite frightening. But when we ask the government for help, that actually is a plan. There's going to be money coming in from the tariffs. Tariffs are put in place to help industries that are dealing with either unfair trade or, well, I guess disadvantages, and we need some help. If we got that help, we could at least skate a little bit. We would be just breaking even. We don't have large margins in our business, probably 10 to 12% usually. And so you can see that we're not asking for a handout. We are saying keep us in the game. To your earlier point of how quickly you can lose customers, it is already happening. That I have tremendous support of people in the U.S. that are now saying, we'll catch up with you in a few months maybe, and we'll talk again. But for now, we have to cover ourselves. It's very, very frightening.
What's your business?
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And you've brought us certainly a dire message. As a 19-year-old auto worker from southwestern Ontario who was laid off during the 2008-2009, I feel it very keenly. And I think about all the folks that are working across all the sectors that you represent and the real fear that they have about their jobs today and what we're facing. I think that the worker income and support is critical. And no one at this point knows what the plan is for workers from the government. So, Mr. Newman, my question to you is, has the government reached out to you, and what have those conversations been about how to support workers that have been impacted over this last 20 days?
No, there's been no reach out to us. We have submitted letters to the Prime Minister and Minister Freeland, and I believe it's also Minister Morneau, I should say, in regards to our concerns. First of all, there's numerous other elements in regards to the transshipment, and in that same letter we also addressed the fact that we're very much concerned about making sure that where people are going to be affected, they have those supports. So we've not.
Well, that's shocking, and I think deeply concerning, because we've now had 20 days of these tariffs being implemented, and we're 5 days away from the retaliatory ones coming into place. And we heard I can read back some of the things we heard today: Carmageddon coming, tsunami-like economic downturn, 20, 30,000 people losing jobs. Like, this is a very pivotal moment for the government to step up and to stand behind working people. So I'm disturbed to hear that conversation hasn't happened. Another thing I believe that Canada has not moved quickly on is the prevention of dumping and transshipment. What can Canada do immediately to protect the industry?
I think immediately, and I mentioned earlier, and Ken did as well, about safeguards. We have to protect Canada from diversion of offshore imports from everywhere else. We're in open market right now, open season. And it only takes a boat or two of steel from these other countries unfairly dumped into Canada that's going to distort our markets. We're already seeing market distortions between Canada and the U.S. This is just going to drive a further wedge and impugn us and hurt us even greater than it is right now.
I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, and we have two major steel players there that many people are familiar with, Algoma Steel and Tenaris Tubes, that has an operation in the Soo and Calgary. We're in a very unique situation where about 60% of the exports from Algoma Steel go into the United States. And so one of the questions I just wanted to ask Ken and Sean is, what kind of effect are these tariffs going to negatively affect the United States and the workers there? I saw in the Washington Post today they talked about the first layoffs in the United States related to steel tariffs. A company just lost 60 employees. It's an ale company down in the States, and they're set to close probably in a few months. So just some comments on the negative effects that these tariffs are going to have on the Americans.
I think we're first of all, we don't support tariffs. We want these things eliminated outright, both sides. That said, they're in existence, so we need to, as we said earlier, we need to retaliate proportionately where steel can't be made in Canada. We need to inflict pain, unfortunately, on U.S. consumers of steel, so they create the impetus in the States to reverse these decisions. So until you see that, they don't give a heck about us, right? They don't care about us. They don't care about our profitability. I sit with CEOs of the U.S. steel mills on the American Iron and Steel Institute, and they're laughing. They're laughing. They're making all kinds of money, and they don't care about Canada. They don't care about their steel shipments into Canada. So we need to inflict pain on U.S. steel consumers, unfortunately, and that's where the pain has to be felt, and the insurrection has to happen in the U.S., not in Canada.
And I've heard the comment earlier in regards to saying that, look, don't poke the bear. I'll tell you what, if you don't poke the bear, he's going to eat your lunch. And that's exactly what's coming down the pike. The fact of the matter is that on the tariffs, I think you have to be tough on it. Look at, we're a sovereign nation. We're proud of the work that we do. We're proud of the employers that we have. We're proud of the communities. Be it the Soo, there's a long-standing history there. And
Is there a steel industry or aluminum industry under the current situation?
Is that all right? Mr. Barry jumps in? Okay.
I just want to make one comment because I'm on the floor. I'm in the war zone. The statement of the consumer will pay the price, I'm saying they won't pay the price. The retail will stop. Okay, that's what I want to say. Okay. The retail will stop. I've been there before. It happens in our tourist business, happens in our car business, happens in our trailer business. When we had the decrease in our dollar, we had a 25% increase in our payments. Boom, our business stopped. That's what happens. So the consumer will not pay the price. Okay, so you will lose money. The federal government lose money because I write my tax dollars this month to you, and it's a lot of money that goes to the government. You'll lose money too. So this ripple effect is a huge ripple effect. That's all I want to say.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the scenario that we're in today. So I look at it in a couple ways. Like, I look at it from a consumer point of view and say, okay, we bring in a counter tariff. So my manufacturers on the prairies, Burgo, companies like that, now start paying a lot more for their steel. Their customers are farmers, which were at a farm progress show last week. They're saying, I think I'm going to keep my drill. So already you're having an impact. The domino effect's already starting to happen. Where does it come back to? Into the steel sector here in Canada. So how do you deal with that? Like, how do you move forward? There's got to be a way to still make the U.S. respect us and still say, okay, there's going to be impact for your decision to put a tariff on without having this whole pile of domino effects. And I know words weren't there, but we've got a government that's spent crazy the last 2 years, and now we've got to find the revenues in order to do those types of things. So where does that revenue come from? And I like your idea about the countervails. If we're going to do that 25%, there's going to be on some $16 billion, there might be, what, $2, $3, $4 billion coming into the coffers? Well, that shouldn't go to the general revenue. That should come back to the people impacted the most. So, Mr. Young, I'm just kind of curious, if this was to go on for 6 months, 8 months, we've got midterms in place right now. What does your business look like in November, December?
It will be a much different picture, and as I've said, we will have to make some difficult employment decisions a little bit. And then we find out that we have to maybe make some worker decisions, lay off some people. You may not get that skilled labor back. Exactly. They will go somewhere else for a job. And we've actually cross-trained, painstakingly cross-trained our 180 employees so that when we are slower in certain areas, they can work somewhere else. It has been, by no means do not hear us say that we think we've got this figured out. But understand that you are hearing from a company that's in the ground that is going to have to deal with your constituents who are going to have to find other work. And that is not a threat. So I don't know where else this can go. I know when we hear from people like Evraz and from ArcelorMittal, this is not saying give money to Janko Steel. This is let's share this money with our entire industry, verified tariff payments. We are not asking for handouts. We are asking to keep us in the game until maybe cooler heads prevail. This will actually then push back a little to let's keep our industry in the game, find some ways to figure out how to do that with money, and let's have verified payments. Let's do that as a team and find a way to stay until something else happens. I do trust that NAFTA will be negotiated. I don't think there's anyone at the table doesn't think something, maybe not three, but something is going to happen with a NAFTA deal. But when is that? And until then, there is absolute irreparable damage will be done. Not just our company, the entire industry.